Kim, welcome to the Elegant Warrior.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh. So, as I mentioned in the introduction, Kim and I went to high school together, and we used to have these big, deep conversations for hours and hours and hours. And who knew that many years later, I won't age us, we would be having very similar conversations here and sharing them with the Elegant Warrior audience. I'm so excited about it. There's so much about your background that we could talk about, but as you know, I really want to talk about motivational interviewing because you told me about it. I was blown away by the ways that it can be used by every single person I know. So why don't we start with what it is, and we'll go from there.
Okay. So motivational interviewing, it's a strength-based way of being with people, that helps people resolve their ambivalence in their lives. And it's so powerful. I was actually doing a keynote speech for young adults, and I went to the workshops, as I always do when I'd like, I want to hear from people. And I heard a gentleman speak about motivational interviewing, and I said, I need to be trained in this. It just seems fantastic. And it's been that way. So I heard about it. I saw this gentleman, Bob Jope, who is still one of my mentors to this day. And I saw him train, and I said, I want to be trained in that. You can feel when a person is skilled in MI, you can feel how much support they're providing for you, and you know that they're rooting for you, and they're helping you kind of think about how do you want to move forward, and what are the blocks in moving forward? Because we all have them, right? I often have MI conversations with the people that I train, and sometimes I do a live demo for them, and sometimes I'm the participant. Like, I want to exercise more, and then we talk about, where's your ambivalence there? Okay, well, sometimes I feel like it's better for me to be working than exercising, things like that. And so MI has been such a positive, transformational kind of piece in my life. I've definitely become a better person, a better partner, a better mom, a better teacher. And so I'm very grateful that I've got to learn and continue to advance and learn in MI.
So MI is motivational interviewing. And before we dive into it more, why don't you share the ways that you use that in your work? What do you do, and why is MI part of what you do?
Okay, no, that's a great question. So I have my own company. It's called Radiate Consulting, and it's a LGBTQ certified, woman-owned company, and we do trainings. So we do trainings for young adults, and we do training for the staff that works with young adults. So we work at places like U Forward Access Center, Youthquake Access Center in Lowell. We work for the Department of Youth Services, and we train people in how to be present with people, how to help them realize their potential, realize where they want to go in a strength-based way, right? No one wants to be told what to do, and this helps people figure out, what do you want to do, and how do you move forward? Excuse me. I work with young adults who are gang involved, and I've never told a young adult, like, you need to get out of the gang. That's presumptuous, that's ignorant, it's really arrogant, right? And I have sat down with many young adults and say, what do you want? What does it look like? Are you happy in this situation? And the young adults will say, well, this is a positive thing, but these are some of the negative things. And we really explore that ambivalence. And I said, well, are you looking for more of this? And they're like, well, yeah, I'm looking to be better connected with my family. And it's really hard for me the way my mother looks at me sometimes, or my father, or my uncle. And it is really stressful. And so we help them explore what kind of differences might you want to make. And sometimes, they're not ready to make a difference, and we explore other things. But there's usually things that people want to improve upon, and it's really focused in that way. So we've made tremendous impact with staff who used to tell people what to do, like, oh, you need to quit smoking. Oh, you need to, stop using alcohol. I just had a conversation the other day with someone, and they were like, I was talking to my doctor about my psychiatric medications, and I was explaining that the holidays are super stressful for me. And so I've been drinking a little bit more. And the psychiatrist just said, well, you can't do that. You can't be drinking. And the person just shut down and was like, oh, okay, oh, all right, and just like clearly knew, like, oh, okay, yeah, exactly, like, and you and I have spoken about that, right? Like, if the doctor had entered into that conversation, I think this person might have been amenable to, right? If it was a motivational interviewing approach, like, okay, I get it. The holidays are really stressful. On the one hand, you're facing a tremendous amount of stress within your family and the expectations. And on the other hand, you just want to wind down and relax. What does that look like? What are you looking to? And I'm almost positive this person would have had this fantastic conversation, like, yeah, there might be other things I could do. Maybe I could, I could go to the gym more. They go to the gym a lot. Like, but it was just such a missed opportunity and a lack of empathy and a lack of awareness. And that's what we're trying to combat through motivational interview.
Yeah, it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, on everything I say here, Kim. Anytime that I say something, they're like, well, that's not quite right. Because once we started talking about it, I dove in and tried to like really get to know it a little bit more. And you've got me signed up for a training in March, which I'm super excited about. But it seems to me that motivational interviewing is really helpful when someone wants to make a change or a choice.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And it's there are 2,500 studies internationally that are evidence-based, that say how effective it is. It's particularly effective in substance use challenges. The research is phenomenal. So imagine 2,500 studies worldwide that talk about its effectiveness. I mean, we know how difficult it is to do, effective research that really talks about that and really can show the evidence. With substance use challenges in particular, it can be, depending on the study, anywhere between 75 and like 90% effective, because it puts the power in the hands of the person. So, I mean, with a substance, like there's no one that woke up one day and said, I really want to abuse substances. I've not met that person, and I've worked with over 1,000 people, right? But you have met that person that, was having a tough day, or someone, or maybe they were having a good day and tried something, and it just led to places they just don't know how to get out of.
Yeah, it's this word ambivalence comes up a lot when you read about it or study about it. And what does that word mean in the context of MI, motivational interviewing? And then is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah, I think in so many changes, right, we're like, we're not quite sure where we land, right? You're like, okay, I know this is a good thing for me, and I know there are some drawbacks. So I work with a lot of young adults. So a young adult would be like, I really want to quit smoking. I want to be able to play my best on the basketball court. They're like, I want to beat my friends, and I know my lung capacity is challenged. But you know what? During the breaks, I really like to go hang out with people and smoke, and I'm connected to the smokers. And I like that feeling when I take a drag of a cigarette that it slows down my breathing. So we'll talk about that. And I'll say, on the one hand, it's really tough to think about quitting because you are connected to the people standing outside, and it's an easy way to kind of spark up with people. And then on the other hand, there's something kind of gnawing at you that that you could be healthier. You want to like connect with people on the basketball court. You want to build your connections in that way. And there's something drawing you to that, making more connections in a healthy way. And the young person will go, yeah. So it's really helping that person have that conversation with themselves with a guide. So an MI practitioner is a facilitator. It's a guide. Like my analogy, and I know you love analogies and metaphors, like when you go on vacation, you don't want a travel planner to book everything for you because they don't know. Do you like looking at architecture? Do you want to be, we're thinking of going to Italy. We're saving up like, what, we want to see architecture. Oh yeah, sure, some architecture, but we certainly want to go on like in Venice and go on learn how to use the gondola. And we definitely want to have some amazing, culinary experiences. So you want someone who can take your feedback and help you go where you want to go. And that's why I love MI. It's very strength-based. It's very positive. There's a lot of validation. So really rewarding the person's efforts, even if they don't go that way, and helping the person resolve their own ambivalence in it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think we've talked about this. I'm certified as a hypnotist.
Yeah.
And the woman who certified me did something at the beginning of the year, and it was just this week, and it's since you and I had spoken. And she was talking about how the subconscious mind often holds on to things because they serve them. And it reminded me a lot of what you do in MI. She gave the example of an older woman who was experiencing a lot of pain. But under hypnosis, she was able to recognize that the pain made it that her family visited her more often. And so she received a benefit from the pain. And so in hypnosis, she was able to sort of work her through it. But it's just so interesting how in both of these things, we all have things that there's a reason that we do what we do. And I think that that's helpful even in the other kinds of work I do when we're talking about others. Everyone has their reasons, and their reasons are good reasons to them. And instead of trying to just tell them, stop doing that thing, stop thinking that way, to explore the reasons that they think that way. And I know one of the things that you do in MI is the change language and the sustain language, which I want to dive into. But I think that it's really important for ourselves and others to recognize there's reasons you do this. It's not, we are all trying to survive. The subconscious and the hypnosis is just trying to keep us alive. And so recognizing that there are reasons, where does that change and sustain language work into that part of the conversation?
Yeah, no, it is quite fascinating. And it's tapping into that reason, right? And it's tapping into the emotion, right? Once you have a reason for doing something, then you will make a huge change, right? But you need the reason behind it. Like we all know, okay, we all need to be healthier. We all need to do this. But oftentimes when your sugars are elevated or your cholesterol is elevated, then you're like, okay, now I'm going to get down to work. That happened to me. Like I was kind of exercising and then they said, these numbers are creeping up. And I'm like, all right, time to make a change. So when there's reasons and motivations, and it's not just me, but, like I want to be healthier overall, to be able to, I don't have to beat my son on the basketball court or swim faster than my daughter. But I want to be out there, right, for a long time. I want a health span, not just a lifespan. So when you can tap into the reason someone wants to do something and the emotions behind it, it's just incredible. I was listening to a podcast and they said this gentleman went to a doctor and the doctor said, like, you need to quit smoking. And the guy was like, yeah, okay, I'll get there. Everyone's going to die, sometime. And he told that to his coworker. Yeah. And then, a little while later, he connected with his daughter and the daughter said, you're going to have a grandchild. And the same gentleman threw away the cigarettes that day because he had a reason, right? Like, that's right. I wanted to be around to see the granddaughter. Like, that's powerful.
It is. It's like measuring the reasons that you want to smoke versus the reasons that you don't, and really doing that in a more thoughtful way. And the thing that two things I really like about MI. One is that it doesn't seem super prescriptive. Like anyone listening. So for you listeners, if you want to make a decision or help someone make a decision whether or not to move or to start a new job, MI can be helpful in all of those things, and also making these, life changes with addictive substances and so forth. And I like that when I listen to people talk about it, they talk about the spirit of MI rather than specifics. Tell us more about the spirit of MI.
So there's something about, right, and it is there's kind of like there are some strategic ways to approach MI, and just having the spirit of MI is super important, and that's where we start. Like, to believe that the person has the capacity to make that change is a huge part of the spirit, and to be able to evoke that change within them. So a lot of times when we talk to people, if we're not trained, we might be like, oh, let's talk about the reasons you're not changing, or let's talk about how you messed up. No one wants to have that conversation. People say to me, Kim, how can you be so positive? And I said, there's always effort taking place. It might not be effective effort, but it's effort, right? I'll sit down with a young person that'll say like, oh, I was doing so well. There were 6 weeks where I wasn't using marijuana and it was going really well. And then I knew I kind of didn't want to go out with this person because I sort of knew we'd end up in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I end up doing things I didn't want to do. And they already know that. So I don't focus on that. I say, well, let's back it up. Tell me about what you did well. Like, tell me about, and they'll say, oh, I went to the YMCA 3 days a week for those 6 weeks. And I was hanging out with these two guys that we were working on a workout together, and I can tell my back is stronger, and I just feel so good when I go there. And I say, okay, how are we going to incorporate more of that? And they're like, yeah, but Kim, I messed up. And I'm like, we all mess up. Mistakes are great because we learn from them. Tell me about what you want to do. So it's a conversation about that person in a strategic way, how they want to move forward. And so the spirit is about believing that that person has the capacity to make that change.
Yeah, it's something that I talk about in my work all the time. That belief, right? Your belief that they have the capacity to make the change, and then feeding their belief that they have the capacity to make the change. And the way that you just talked about the kid who went to the YMCA, that, whether you use these words or not, it's evidence that you can make change, right? And it's evidence that when you do these things, you become stronger and your back becomes stronger. And it's evidence that builds belief. And so pointing out that evidence in a way that is not, yelling or trying to make people feel worse, it really is a spirit of compassion, which is something that I talk about a ton in my work. Right. There's a lot of, oh God, are they called anagrams? When you use a bunch of letters to mean something. Yes. And one of them is OARS. Yes. I think that's probably one of the most basic ones. Can you tell the listeners what that is? Because that might help them to sort of see how it works.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So OARS is, absolutely one of the fundamentals. So it's O is for open-ended questions. So, if you ask a kid like, did you have fun at school today? They'll say no or yes, but you don't get a lot of information. So you want to ask kind of, how was school today? And then you can dive into a little bit more specifically, you get more information if you're like, how was music? If they like music, or how was PE today, physical education. So asking open-ended questions, because you could miss the point if you ask a very targeted question. So MI kind of opens things up to people. So that's important. Like, what do you want to talk about today? I don't have an agenda when I talk with people. I work with young adults with severe mental health challenges. I work with practitioners in Department of Youth Services that work with incarcerated young people. I work with frontline staff. I work with supervisors. And every conversation is very open. What do you want to talk about today? How can I support you? And people just feel that, right? So open-ended questions are key, not asking those closed-ended questions where you could miss what's important to them, because I might not know. And then so A is affirmations. So affirmations are a beautiful thing. I kid, they're like these socks. Like socks are an undervalued accessory. I love socks. I'd have from high school. I don't know if you remember that. I used to wear the Argyles under the uniform. But so I've always loved socks, right? We have to bring it back old school. But so affirmations are so strategic. And they're like, you could say to someone like, yeah, you made a great shot. But to be more specific. So affirmations, when my son was little, he started on a basketball team and he had his first game and he came out from the game and he was like, I was like, that was a great game. You did really well. And he said, Mom, no. And I was like, he said, come here. And he pulled me off. I remember it was like yesterday and it was like 10 years ago. He called me over to the side of the school and was like, Mom, I didn't have a good game. And I'd really appreciate it if you were, a little bit more grounded in your feedback and a little bit more specific. And I was like,
oh, Kim, he's your son.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my goodness, I teach this stuff and I just stepped in it, right? I completely stepped in it. And he was so excited. He had his uniform. And so I said, you know what? You're right. And he said, did you even watch the game? And I was like, I did. I was watching every minute. And he was like, but I didn't, didn't know basketball as well. And I just, and so, fast forward to the next game. And so I had watched a few like basketball games in between and I had really kind of paid attention. And he said, I said, I'm never going to be not enthusiastic. That's just who I am about my kids and about anyone I work with, right? That's the spirit. But I do hear you. So he walked out of the game and I waited till we got in the car and I said, you know what? I saw you do a really great block. And the way you put your hands up the way you're supposed to and you arched a little bit. And he was like, yes, I did. Thank you. And I said, and I saw you had a really beautiful bounce pass and you circumvented the other guy and went and made a cut underneath. And then that guy did the basket. And he goes, yeah, that was pretty cool, huh? And I go, yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. And then he said, did you also see how I did that other thing? And I was like, I did see that. I was going to say that next. And so it was really, really funny. It was really, really funny. So fast forward to last night, I was at my son's basketball game, and he's now in high school. That was when he was, super young. And I said, I noticed that you weren't blocking up to past the 3-point line. And I said, when I saw the game last time, the young man who had your position really went up. And he said, well, Mom, that's a really good observation. And I said, oh, yes. So specificity matters, and an affirmation is all about the other person. So you always start with you, and you emphasize the effort and a personal characteristic. So I wouldn't be mad if someone said, like, I'm proud of you, but it's about me. So I try and dig a little bit deeper to say, like I said to my son, like, you put forth a really defensive effort last night. And he was like, yeah, thank you. And I said, that block was really cool. And he added, he's a little bit taller, so the blocks are a little bit more effective. But like when you're acknowledging someone's effort, like I work with a lot of young adults, and I worked with a young adult whose mother had a lot of challenges. And she shared her story with me the other day. And I said, you have worked so hard to honor your educational goals and to overcome so many challenges to obtain your degree. And she her whole face, right? Just honoring the effort and knowing what she had been through. That's a true affirmation. So it begins with you. It's about the person's effort, acknowledging their efforts. And it just makes a huge difference. So I've trained so many people in affirmations, and I say to them, be careful. It could improve your relationships.
Could save your life.
Yeah, it really does. I trained a woman in MI, and it was a whole staff, and it was a frontline staff, and this person was a supervisor at a mental health place called DPPC, Disabled Persons Protection Commission. So they work with people who have both developmental disabilities and who have also experienced sexual assault. So we train their supervisors, and then we train the frontline staff. And one of the supervisors came to me and said, Kim, I actually used this on my partner. She had gone through a tremendous amount of health struggles. And one day we were driving to like a doctor's appointment, and I said, the person said, I said to my wife, like, I see you. Like, you are really paying attention to nutrition, and you've really honored like all the things to keep yourself as healthy as possible. And you've really overcome so much. And she said they both ended up in tears. And it was like one of the best conversations like they had, like that kind of I see you. And I think people have a really deep need to be seen and heard and listened to. And affirmations do that. It's very powerful.
I always say people want to just be seen, safe, and special.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I'm going to borrow that.
Yeah,
Seen, safe, and special. Ooh, I'll give you credit. I'll give you
Make
credit.
them feel all three, right, Kim?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the R?
Okay, so the R is reflections, to reflect back what the person is saying. Because so often in this world, right, you say, how are you today? The person says, good, you go on. I always stop people. You and I had this conversation the other day. You were like, oh, I was like, how was your Christmas? And you were like, it was this. And I'm like, well, but I needed to hear more. So you're saying this and this, right? So I want to hear more. And people can feel that, and it's reflecting back. So someone might say, I'm really angry because my partner didn't pick me up at the train. And I would say, like, you're really upset, you're frustrated, you're feeling like you're not valued because the person didn't pay attention to when you needed to be picked up. And they're like, yes. So that's a form of reflecting back. You don't want to reflect back like a parrot, like, you're angry. If you go back and say, like, you're angry, the person's like, yeah, hello, I just said that. But if you can capture that, so that's a reflection, which leads us to the S, which is the summaries. So a summary is a really powerful way to kind of wrap up what the person has said. And it's really a gift to the person. I do a training called The Gift, called Gathering Inspiring Future Talent. But this is really like when someone tells you a bunch of things, and you're not trying to jump in, you're not trying to ask more questions, you're not trying to fix the person, right? We all sort of have that, like, oh, I know the answer. But you just take a moment, a pause, and you say, you're feeling like you don't matter to that person because they didn't show up when you needed them to pick you up at the train. And you feel like, is that person really worthy of, me spending the time and energy and effort on them in the future. And you're just feeling really hurt and upset, and you're not really sure what to do with all these emotions. And the person's like, yeah. So summaries are a beautiful way of like saying, like, let me make sure I get this. Let me make sure I'm on the same page. And people love that. And I love it. I love MI. Like, people ask me, is motivational interviewing manipulative? If you're well trained, not at all. It's really, I get in a space and it's a powerful conversation all about that person. And I don't have the answers for them. They have the answers, and I'm going to guide them to the. So I love trip planning. My kid's kid that I'm going to be like a trip planner, maybe at Disney or, in the future when I retire. I'm not sure if I'm ever going to retire, but I might, but I love to trip plan with my friends, and we go to all different places. And, but I'm looking for what the different people love. Like, I'm not going to all my favorite restaurants. I want to know, like, what's fun for you. And okay, well, the boys would like to do this. So we travel with a basketball, and okay, let's find the nearest basketball court. So we kind of check off that box. And okay, my friend loves, water. So we want to make sure we have that piece of it. And my wife loves this about traveling. So I think that's how I see MI. When you're doing MI effectively, I'm not trying to change anyone's mind. I'm trying to have a powerful, positive conversation about where they want to go and how they want to get there, which I think is so powerful and unique.
So Kim, I don't know, we didn't talk about this question, so I don't know if you can answer it, but where can someone find, say I'm listening to this episode and I'm like, I want to talk to somebody who's trained in this. It sounds like such a great way for me to optimize my potential and to tap into my intuition about what's right for me, which is probably the best answer to all of the questions we have. Is there a list somewhere of people?
Yes. So that's a great question. So I am both so there's something called MINT, Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers. So I am a MINT trainer. And then they came out with a certification. I'm like, oh, well, I got to get that certification now. So I'm one level higher. I'd like to, I went through a certification process where you have to have someone videotape your training, and then you have to match it up to a matrix. So I'm that level. But to find a motivational interviewing, if you're looking for a therapist, you can go on the MINT website. It's Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers, MINT. And I would encourage everyone. I help lots of people find therapists, and I always say, if you can, find someone who has the motivational interviewing credential. And has a pretty in-depth one. Because some people say, oh, I know motivational interviewing. I've been to 3 hours. And I'm like, ooh, no, you have to go to hundreds and hundreds of hours. And again, you can capture the spirit. So there are different levels. Some people come to I will do a day-long training. And they're like, okay, now I have the spirit. And I'm like, that's a great first step. And for some people, that isn't, that's where they want to be. But to someone who truly knows the nuances of, we touched upon this a little bit, change talk. So there's a thing when someone says like, I really want to do this. That's their desire to do this. And there's something called you want to fan the flame, like you love a metaphor, right? So I tell my practitioners, when someone says, I want to exercise more, you're like, all right. You don't jump in and say, like, why aren't you exercising more? Because the person, your brain will come up with, well, because I'm busy, because I'm, I have, however many kids, I'm taking care of my elderly dad or mom, or I'm super busy, right? So you want to ask the question, like when someone says, like, I want to exercise more, and you go, oh, okay, great. Tell me more about that. What does that look like to you? Fanning. So, like, I'm often, I'll do a live demo, and I'll say, like, I want to exercise more, and someone will say, like, if they're a new practitioner, they might jump in and say, like, why don't you get a Fitbit? And I'm like, oh, I could need to track something else in my life. Like, that's not my thing. But when I have someone good, they'll say, well, I know you have done things in the past to increase your exercise. And so I had a great conversation with a young person, well, younger than me, a staff at U Forward. And they said, well, you really love to exercise with your kids. Playing basketball with your son is exercise. And he said, I thought you had a net. And I said, oh, I do, but the light is out. And I said, that's a great thing, right? And so it came to like what I love to do. So I went home and emailed the handyman a couple of days later and was like, can you come and put in a light? And he did. And my son and I go out like it's a little cold now, but in the fall and in the summer and the spring, we're out there, and make no mistake, he does wipe the floor with me. But
Exercise.
But it's exercise, and I work hard to not be embarrassed. And it's good. And I came up with that answer in MI, and it's been a great one. And we sometimes work out together. We just were in Florida, and he's like, I want to go to the gym. I'm like, there's no reason I can't go to the gym. I'm on vacation. I'm going with you. So to be able to do that is very powerful. So those are the pieces. So you can go to the Mint website to learn more. There's also a place called HEADY, which is health education, teaching, information. So that they're out of Maine, and one of my mentors is out of there. So they teach motivational interviewing if you want to learn more.
Amazing. I'll put links to all of that in the show notes.
Okay. Yes, I will get you those links.
I will put your link. I was on your
Yes.
website today. The work you do to help people in the LGBTQ community and beyond. So many ways that you help kids, especially. It is your legacy. It is what you were born to do. And I'm just so glad you could come on and share what you do with my listeners, Kim. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Heather. It's been a pleasure. I always love talking to you, and I'm so excited we reconnected, and just to think about where the collaborations will go. But yeah, I would highly encourage people to look into motivational interviewing and see how it may benefit them. Absolutely.